it's 4:30. Close enough. There's a glare right up on the clock up there. I'm going to start. I'm going to just need a couple more minutes before we get here. So my presentation will probably be 20 to 30 minutes long, and then there'll be some time for questions. But it is the end of the day. I know we've all been going to session after session all day. I know everyone's looking forward to the mixer and dinner, and to continue networking after this. So.
Yeah, get us ready for all that networking we need to do after.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
It's fine. Do some practice.
Well, I will be, yes, pulling volunteers from the audience this afternoon. No. I just got to remember that the stage is here, so I can walk off it. Perfect, everything's working. So about 2 more minutes and we'll begin. Is everyone excited to be here in Santa Barbara? Nice weather, huh? Compared to where I came up from, the San Fernando Valley, sweltering hot. All right, we might as well start, I guess, right? You guys ready? I'm Michael Miller. I work at UCLA. I'm an instructional designer and trainer for the IT services department. Particularly, I work in the customer engagement. We just rebranded ourselves from an older name, and now we're known as customer engagement. So I do a lot of instructional design, in-person training, as well as developing online training for any products that IT services provides to its customers on campus, as well as training for internal IT services staff. And so let's get started. So what I'm going to go over, pretty much the agenda for this afternoon is I'm going to talk a bit about me, and then I'm going to sort of go over the benefits of networking and go over some essential networking strategies. Now, I know there's a ton of books out there that you can read. I'm just gonna go off basing my experiences because I've had a long career at UCLA, as you'll see, and I'll just talk about some things that I'll weave some of my experiences into each of these sort of areas I'm gonna talk about, and then I'll open up the floor for some questions. So first off, I've been at UCLA for 26 years. A long time, so thank you. So I've learned a lot. I've jumped around different jobs. I've met a lot of people. I have, out of a lot of relationships, I have good working relationships with people, for the most part. And it's just nice to work for the university compared to some other places I worked before this, which I will briefly cover. So in my career at UCLA, I'm currently an instructional designer and trainer, and I've been doing that for 6 years. I love my team. I have one of the best teams ever. There's 3 of us on the team. There used to be 4. Somebody just left recently. And we're like, I just love my coworkers. We got each other's back. We help each other. And so it makes it a fun environment to work in. And we're all personable. We're all respectful of one another. Previous to my 6-year career in instructional design and training, I was doing web design and development before that for probably about 12 or 13 years in various departments. So previous to my instructional design position, I was doing web design and development for the web and content strategy group in IT services. And then before that, I was the web designer for the psychology department for about 4 years. And then before that, I was the technology coordinator for, and not many people know this place. There's the UCLA has the biomedical library at UCLA, and there's a government grant that's been there since 1968, and it's the Pacific Southwest Regional Medical Library. It sort of falls under the umbrella of the National Network of Libraries of Medicine, and also under NLM. I started there in like 1993, and I started off as an admin assistant when I first came to UCLA, and then a couple of years later, the web exploded, and they said, do you want to learn? Sorry. The web exploded, literally. Yeah, that was embarrassing. My boss was like, we don't have anybody to do a web page. Can you do a web page? So I just started learning HTML, and then, at that job I would do network administration. We had a training lab, and I would travel a lot, so I'd meet various people all over the United States. There were 8 chapters all across the United States. So I started to know a lot of people, and it was just really exciting back then in the early 90s and mid-90s rather, when the web was, just like starting off. And so I was really like enamored with technology, and so I was just fortunate to eventually end up in IT services. So I do not have a computer science degree. I was pretty much all self-taught, and I just like tech and taking things apart. Before UCLA, I graduated from UCLA actually with a BA in music performance, classical guitar. And then I wanted to get into music publishing, so I got a job at Capitol Records right out of college. And I didn't stay too long. This is like 91, 92. There was a recession. I remember working for Capitol Records and working for a Euro dance music publisher for about a year. And, back then, people my age, we would like jump from career to career because there would be layoffs. I worked in the famous Capitol Records building on, I think Sunset and Vine, Hollywood and Vine? Sunset and Vine, home of the Beatles. So a couple memorable experiences from working in the entertainment industry, which framed why I sort of got out of it and came to the educational environment was, one good thing. I was working in the art department, production department, and they said, everybody, stop working. We want you to come down to Studio A. We have a very special guest we want you to meet. And we're like, okay. Let's go downstairs, walk in, and there at the front is Paul McCartney. And they're like, you can each have your picture taken with Paul. And I was in my sort of anti-Beatles phase because I grew up with an aunt who babysat me, and she played Beatles over and over and over. And so I was like, well, whatever. And they're like, do you want to take a picture with them? I'm like, yeah. Paul put his arm around me, shook his hand, we took a picture. So I did, I'm proud to say I did touch a Beatle. So, and then later they're like, do you want a picture with Paul? And I'm like, sure, that would be great. And they're like, well, that's going to be like $20 for the, and I'm like, what? Exactly. So I was like, no. And now to this day, I really wish I would have got that picture because I would have framed it and put it in my hall. So I'd say, there's Paul and I, we're good buds, And then I used to work next to this guy named Ralph. We nicknamed David Lee Ralph. He used to jump up on his desk at any time of the day, kick his leg up and go, this is Diamond Dave talking to you, wow. And he'd do that every day for like months as I came to work. And I was just like, I'm so sick of this guy. So a lot of craziness at Capitol Records. But the thing that made me leave was I had a boss who was looking for a memo, and she blamed me for losing it. And I finally found it and said, you buried a bunch of stuff, because she was sort of out of it. And she threw a Yellow Pages phone book at me across the room. So I ducked and I walked down to HR and I said, I don't want to work here anymore. So they reassigned me to another department, and then eventually I just left and got a job. But there's a good, silver lining to the story. I came to work at UCLA and I've been there ever since. So I don't want to talk too much about me, but if I see you later at the mixer or later, and you want to talk or ask me any questions, come on up. So some of the hobbies and interests I'm in, you've probably heard of Settlers of Catan or Catan. I'm sort of a kind of person who's into like board games and puzzles. I play heavier strategy games like that. I'm also a vinyl junkie. I collect vinyl records. I have way too many. It's a disease. If anyone's thinking about starting, don't. It's fun though. I'm also, even though I played guitar at UCLA, I am now into modular synthesizers. I know some of you have probably seen those. If you don't know what that is, think of those old photos of people that actually patch like old telephone operators who patch cables in. That's sort of what that whole thing is about. And then I record and write my own music, mostly experimental stuff. And this cartoon that somebody sent me pretty much sums up me. It's, I used to suffer alone in silence. Now through my music, I can cause many others to suffer. So, it's like my mom. Can I hear some of your music, Michael? No, Mom, you don't want to hear the kind of stuff I do. Anyways, so to get to the meat of the talk here, why network? You've probably networked already while you've been here, right? The whole point of it is to establish and maintain long-term relationships, both personal and business related. So there'll be personal and business crossing one another in order to further your career or update your skill set. So you can probably think of somebody you've encountered in the past. You're like, hey, this person knows a little bit more about this and I'm interested in this sort of technology. And you just start talking to them and asking. And people are always willing to help and share information. That's what's great about education. What are some of the benefits of networking? Well, first off, there's job opportunities. If you're maybe interested in maybe switching careers, you can do a little sleuthing around, find somebody that works in a department and just maybe have some coffee with them, find out a little bit more about the environment, what the job entails, what the environment's like. Then there's also career advice. You can always, there's always people that mentor you. You can always look to them for career advice. Gain new perspectives. Not everybody is into the same thing, but it's always nice to gain a new perspective by talking to somebody who has a different outlook on the way you do things. So you can that stimulates and generates ideas. You can gain useful skills that way. If you're a little shy, networking's good. It can build up your confidence. So the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more comfortable you become. It can generate income for your department or personally. I've had several situations where I've treated someone fairly and I've done some work on the side, outside of work, and it's resulted in, hey, you did a great job. And you're a really nice person and you do a great job. Here, I have somebody else that I'd like you to help. So it's about connecting people and just, building up that relationship. You can also make new friends. I've made a lot of friends at UCLA and through just people I've actually just talked to and met at conferences. So there's a ton of different strategies, right, you can use. And these are the ones I use the most. And it's just to be a genuine person is one. And these first three sort of are the kind that if you're a seasoned networking pro, you might want to step back and just reevaluate these first three before you start networking again or at an event. But in general, be genuine, and I'll touch on each of these. Learn to give, communicate effectively, get involved, explore the unknown, be a reliable person, and follow up. Always follow up. That's one of the most important things, to continue that relationship with somebody. So in terms of being genuine, what I talk about then is to be yourself. People are more attracted to people that are themselves, right? Not people who name drop and sort of talk about, people can come across a lot as a know-it-all. And are you really going to want to talk to somebody again after they're just constantly talking about themselves, etc.? Or they're so obviously trying to sort of talk to you to get something, without anything in return. Be confident, don't be overly confident, because sometimes you can come across as pretty arrogant. So just be careful when you're practicing that. Be personable. Always be respectful of people, because you never know. In the future. I mean, I've seen several situations where somebody that I've worked with later became my boss. 10 years later, 15 years later. So always treat anyone you run across with respect, and just be a nice person in general. Talk to people as if they're your friend. If you're talking to somebody in networking, don't immediately. A lot of people are inclined to just rush the point of this is what I need, or hey, I'm looking to get this job, I need this. Just talk to people, find out about them, find out what makes them tick, what kind of hobbies they're into. And just treat people like they're a friend. It will pay off in the future. Other thing is related to this is don't overpromise things. Everyone's stretched too thin with technology and all the work they have to do. So just because you want to impress something, just don't overpromise. Take things in small chunks. And then learn to give. So what I say is give to get, and you can do this by, providing advice. Like people have come to me like, hey, how do you, since I deal with a lot of audio, they'll go, wow, your videos sound really good. How do you do that? And I would just provide advice and sort of help them. And, you can just draw on your past experiences and guide people and just help them. People want to help, and people also want to receive help. So it's a circular relationship there. Also, it's not just about you and the person you're talking to. If you're talking to somebody and networking with them, and you find out that they're looking for something and you don't actually have that skill, but you know somebody that does, be the person that actually connects those two people together. That's, I think, rather important. And let's see. My clicker's stuck. There we go. And then learn to communicate effectively. And that's always smile when you're talking to somebody, right? Make eye contact. I know when you're first starting off and you're nervous, some people have that. If you're, have a little bit of social anxiety, you can get through it. I know there's books and articles that will address people that are like, I consider myself somewhat extroverted. I'm a very social person, which is probably why I'm in training, but I also do like to spend a lot of time on my own. So at some point during the day, I just need to step away and just be by myself and do things. So I sort of float between the two. Always make eye contact. The other thing is learn to listen to people. And I get overly excited sometimes, and I'll talk and talk. You've just got to read people's body language and know that you're the one sucking up all the air. And then just always in the back of your mind, just try and be a listener. Step back and just leave some space. Let the person talk. Listen to them. You'll find that the conversation between both of you is a lot more productive. So, and then the other thing is always be present in the moment. Oh, hold on a sec, you guys. You guys hold on. I just got a call. No, I told you not to call me during the presentation. Yeah, I'll call you in about a half hour. Okay, thanks. No, that wasn't a real phone call. There's nothing worse than you're talking to somebody and they like put the business card in your hand, and they're like, because they see somebody that's more important than them, and they go over to that person instead. So just treat everyone fairly, listen, and just be present in the moment. And the other thing is leave open space in the conversation. Just like a musical composition, rest and silence makes the music a little more effective. If you just leave a little space and maybe just pause a little after talking to someone, it sort of makes the conversation flow a little better, I think. Be aware of body language, yours and others. And I'll be honest, sometimes I get a little nervous and I'll do certain things. So I'm always aware of I'm pretty comfortable now when I talk to people. I used to be super nervous, which is funny because I used to play in rock bands and I would always be nervous before we hit the stage, like butterflies and all that stuff. But after you do it a while, you get comfortable. One thing I'm always trying to be aware of is if I'm in a conversation, I know this is about networking, but if I'm in a conversation with someone and they are I am super bored, I'll sometimes I find myself whenever I'm super bored, I cross my arms like this. I know that's comfortable to sit like that, but just be aware of stuff like that. So, and I was just hitting my microphone. I guess I have to point it at the machine. The other thing is get involved. There's so many opportunities, meetups, events. Call somebody out of the blue, have coffee with them, go to a meetup. There's just so many great events. You're here today and tomorrow. So, practice networking here, which you're probably already doing, right? That's the whole point of this whole conference, is to meet people and to develop relationships so that you can work towards the common goal of, doing things for the UC system and as well as your organization and sharing knowledge with one another. Or start your own meetup event. Back when I worked in psychology, I heard an announcement that they were going to be rolling out the Plone content management system. We had the Plone content management system before we had Drupal at UCLA. I just wanted to meet people because we were using that content management system. And so I looked around LA and there wasn't a group. And so I started the Plone users group. Now there wasn't that many of us back then, but it was nice. I could meet other people that were sort of similarly like-minded and into the software. So I ran that for about 2 years, and that was a good experience. Also volunteer, you can always meet people by volunteering to help. So if there's an event on campus, volunteer. You'll meet people and make connections that way. And always explore the unknown. So learn to take risks. If there's something you don't know anything about, or just think of things you don't know that might be interested to you, like, I don't have any experience doing this, but maybe I should just go check out this meeting, and maybe I should talk to this person. You can learn a lot by just taking risks. Go to events, classes, conferences you've never been to before. Or like, I did this yesterday, I practiced this because I was looking at my slide deck. Typically, when I get to a conference, I'll find the people I work with and go to the table and sit with them first. But sometimes I'll just go up to a table where there's a bunch of people and just introduce myself. Hey, I'm Michael. And that's happened at the conference a lot, so it's really nice that people have been doing that. Just sit down and just start talking to the stranger next to you. You'll find that you might have a lot in common with them. Or you might find usually that they know someone that you know, because everyone, if you look in the whole universe, there's things always come back to. I have so many weird cosmic encounters with people that know other people that I know. So it's just interesting. And just be creative, I mentioned I was into modular synthesizers, so I noticed that on a Facebook post there was an event called Modular on the Spot. Now I was a guitar player, I didn't know how to play keyboards or mess with electronics like that, but I was sort of interested in it. So there's these group of people who used to just set up these free concerts at night in the park with a little generator, and they just randomly pop up in places and do these weird experimental music events. And I started going to those, and I met people that were in, and people started saying, hey, I'll teach you how to use this or use that. So it was cool. I'd meet up and hang out, and I've got a couple friends like that. So it's always pretty cool to just explore the unknown or do things that you're not used to doing. The other thing is be reliable, right? Always be on time. If you're gonna network with people, always be on time. There's nothing more annoying than, I understand being late for 5 minutes, etc. But just be on time and be reliable. And also, if you commit to something, follow through on it. A lot of people don't, and that's where it's sort of a waste of time for everybody involved. So I just wanted to point that out. So the one thing, I can give an example. I had a person that always wanted to go to lunch with me and learn more about web design. And I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, I'll do it. And 5 minutes before I was about to walk out the door, I got an email from them. Oh, I really can't do it today. I'm so swamped at work. And I'm like, okay. And they're the one that initiated the whole contact. So then 2 weeks go by, they email me again. Hey, can we meet for lunch? I'm like, sure. They didn't show up. So what do you think happened the third time they asked me to lunch? I didn't even bother to reply back to the email. I'm like, sorry. Excuse me? They didn't show up. No, not the second one. And then when I contacted them later, they're like, oh my God, I'm so busy. And I'm like, you, my friend, need some time management courses. So, because it usually boils down to someone being completely not knowing how to manage their time, right? Because it's important. You can't just like work. You got to take a break, step away, and then, stepping away and like talking to somebody else, even bringing up a problem you're having. I used to do web development. Sometimes I would be stuck on something, that one line of code that you can't figure out. You've gone to every user group online, you've asked everyone you can't find it, you sleep on it, you come back, then you find somebody that can either help you or the answer's there like, a week later, and it's like, just a little simple line of code. It's probably why I moved away from doing web design and stuff, because it's just, I don't have the brain to be a coder, but it was fun to, learn. And one of the most important things, always follow up. Thank everyone for their time that you meet with. And you can either do it, you don't have to be aggressive and follow up right away. You can send an email the next day. Or what's nice is particularly if it's what I call informational interviews, where you're taking up someone's time in order to gain information about a department, or it's basically related to your career. I like to buy thank you cards and write a handwritten note and hand deliver it to the office or stop by. That's just a nice touch. I've gotten several of those from people for being on projects, and it's just nice to get something that's handwritten saying, I really appreciate all the time you spent helping us out. Because I always file those away too I have a kudos folder, which is so that when I go to my next job, I can say, oh, I have some examples of, some situations where I really help people out and they're very appreciative. So that's good to have. So also have a plan to regularly recontact people you've made contact with, right? And I store people's contacts in my phone, but one thing I find useful is, does anybody here use Trello or Asana, any of those like project management tools? Those are great. I was using Asana for work projects, but as you can see here, I highlighted, I have like a little networking tab. These are some things I'm gonna do starting today and after the conference, and it's a list of people I need to contact. So it'll send me a reminder, and this is using the Microsoft Planner. The reason I'm using it is we have an Office 365 license, it's included, and it does the job for me. It's nice and simple. But I highly recommend that if you have Office 365 and that's included in your licensing. Now, excuse me. This is called Planner, Planner. And if you go to your web-based portal for if you have Office 365, you might find it in the list of applications. Yes? Okay, so the question is like, I'll meet somebody, but I'm not sure what to really say in order to when I recontact them, or I don't know. It all depends. I just usually hey, thanks so much for taking time. I found it really interesting that you're also working on this similar training project. If you have some time in a couple weeks, I'd love to get together again, and specifically, I'm having a problem with this, or it may be that you offered to help them. So, does that sort of frame it a little better? Is it I don't know what to say because you're a little shy, or?
I think it's that, and sometimes I know I should connect with this person, but I don't have the questions yet.
Oh. Yeah, I don't really you're going to meet people without going out of your way on purpose to meet them for specific. I don't know, just be casual, treat them like a friend. That's the way I look at it. And then to a certain point, right? You've got, I wouldn't email the chancellor and say, hey, I met you at the little wine and cheese thing last week, and I was wondering, that's a little different. So just gauge the, I guess the level of, anyways. So yes, that was called Planner. And there's also one called Asana, A-S-A-N-A, which is really nice. It was interesting, there was a NPR article a couple weeks on how white collar workers who use this technology are starting to use this to sort of have their kids do chores and homework, these project management utilities. And they were like, no, aren't your kids supposed to have less screen time? And this person was talking, well, it just is what it is. This is the direction we're all moving. I just thought that was really interesting. I got about 15 minutes left. Just talk briefly about a few of my own experiences. So the last two positions that I had in IT services, both of them were a direct result of networking over a period of about a year for each of them. So when I worked in psychology, they were rolling out the Plone content management system, and I was going to the campus web publishers group for about 2 years, and somebody did a presentation saying IT services will be moving to the Plone content management system. I asked the person that was running the project if they wanted to go to lunch, and they said, we will be starting this probably in about 9 months. And so I just regularly checked in. what's the status? Hey, would you want to go to lunch? And then when I found out they were actually moving towards it and they would be hiring specific people, I said, hey, I'm really interested in this position. I met with them for coffee and a couple lunches, and I ended up getting hired. So that was a direct result of networking. And I used some of the strategies we discussed for that, but most importantly and specifically, I was persistent in following up without being pushy, right? I sort of was not in a rush to get the job and like frustrated. I know some people, if you're unhappy in a job, you'll just apply to anything. I've always sort of taken a step back and, things will sort themselves out in the long run as long as I just keep in contact, because people generally want to help people, right? And if you're a nice, like I said, a genuine person, things will happen. The other job was the same thing. I wanted to switch careers, and one of my clients said, oh, you have training experience. I was talking to them, and they were like, we're going to have a position in about 9 months open. And that same thing happened. I went and had lunch with them, and eventually I talked to the director, and they said, I encourage you to apply. There'll be other people, but, your chance is as good as anybody else's. And I ended up getting the job there. And then a recent job interview. In the last 4 years, I did decide I was possibly going to leave IT services. And I know our CIO's in the back, and he's. I was thinking about leaving, let's say that. So I went on that's better framed. I went on a job interview. I was actually walking through Westwood, and I ran into somebody that I worked with 16 years before from the library. And they were in the medical side now. And I had been interested in the Epic healthcare system and learning maybe to go over and do training for them. And she said, there's this job as a trainer. And she remembered me and said, I think you'd be perfect for it. Let me hook you up with the person that's actually going to be hiring. So I met the person, and right when I walked in the door to meet the person, I'm like, wait, I've trained this person before. I trained them on their website 2 years earlier when they were in another department on how to actually manage their website. And now, you never know where, who will be where. I ended up applying, interviewing, and I thought I was going to get the job. I was this close, but they chose an internal candidate, which is fine. I'm happy where I'm at now, but the other thing is I do encourage people to do, even if you're not planning on leaving a job, always interview. Remember that when you interview, just to get experience, it's a good way to get your resume updated. So you're sort of forced to have to update it. And secondly, remember, when you interview for a job, it's not just them interviewing you, right? You're interviewing them. So you could be in there and see all these red flags, and you're just basically interviewing to find out more about the job and the department. And sometimes it's like, oh, I see the red flags. I don't think I want to go down that road. But in any event, those are some of the experiences I've had. And I know that in my overview of the talk, I didn't update it. I did say that I would talk about how our department gained more clients. So I was training for Skype for Business, and I was training someone in the finance department, and they were super grumpy that they had to use Skype. Like, what is this chat application? I don't want to use this. And not everyone had showed up for the meeting yet, and they were just super huffy about it. And I sort of used my sense of humor and calmly talked to them about the benefits of it. And then it got around to them asking me, so what do you do in your job? And I said, oh, we provide training services. Oh, what kind of services do you provide? He says, well, we do online. Oh, you do online courses? And then it turned into them saying, well, we have somebody who's in our administrative office, and she does 2.5 to 3 hour WebEx sessions to train people on this financial software. And she really doesn't have she really needs to be doing other things, but this is sucking up so much of her time. And I said, well, have you ever considered maybe moving this to an online course that would just be fully automated for anybody that's jumping on this new system? And I met with them after the Skype training about a month later, and they said, well, yeah, sure, do the course for us. So they were a client of ours. We developed the course. They were super happy. After that course got developed and delivered, they said, well, we have another financial app, and we have another person that's sort of in the same boat. They're training too. So it was a win-win situation for all. We gained clients, and we've done several other projects for them. So that's resulted in some new clients and positive income for our department. So there. That's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions? Hit it? Yes. What?
What's the biggest these days you see people making in networking?
Oh, the biggest mistake? So she asked, what's the biggest mistake I see in people networking? Like I said, following up with people, right? I think following up is because you'll meet them, you'll talk, but if you don't follow up, you're not maintaining that relationship with them. They can just fall off to the wayside. I think that's probably one of the biggest. I mean, it just also be aware how you come across too to people. I mean, most people are good-natured and friendly. You know, the other mistake is I think one other big mistake people make is to immediately out the door when they meet someone, sort of get to the point of why they're actually contacting the person. Like, it sort of becomes, it seems like they're insincere because it's like, hey, it's really cool that you work in this department. I'd love to learn more about what you're doing, but do you know anything about that job that opened up and then they suddenly lose interest. Do you know anybody you could connect me with to, sort of using people to step up somewhere else? I don't know. I think that could be another mistake. So, did anybody else have any other questions? All right, great. Well, I hope you guys found this helpful. So, and thank you. And if you see me at any of the events, just feel free to come up and chat.